Had an elderly lady in SC Low Country call, and she was afraid someone had put a root on her, kind of like voodoo. Some white powder like flour had appeared on her porch, and she didn't know what to do. I asked her if she had a straw broom. She did. I told her to get the broom in a dustpan, walk backward out the door into the mysterious powder, sweep it to the dustpan, and back up to the left side of her porch, throw the powder out over her left shoulder, dust the broom off well on the porch rail, and that was that. She did it and was happy. When I was younger, my mother was a paramedic supervisor. The dispatch desk was pretty much handled by the dispatcher and whomever was closest to the phone. Pretty laid-back environment. The 911 operator would transfer and relay the calls to the person answering the phone at the ambulance station. I would randomly answer often while I was there hanging out, just to feel important. I answered one day, and this guy said he got the wrong number. Now, the same phone was used to business lines and emergency transfers, so you had to pay attention to what light turned on when the phone rang. When I answered this man's call, he called the business line. He told me it was an accident. I misunderstood and thought said there had been an accident. I immediately handed the phone to my mom so she could adult. My mom spoke to him for what seemed like hours. Turns out, the man was calling his daughter whom he hadn't spoken to in years. He was calling to tell her goodbye because he was going to end his life. I don't know if my mom was amazing at her job or if it was fate. But that man, as far as I know, is still alive to this day and credits that to dialing the wrong number. Not exactly a 911 call, but close. I can't get this jar of peanut butter open, and if I don't get the peanut butter in the feeder, the squirrels will be mad, maniacal laughter, frequent flyer, mentally ill. There's a huge fire. Oh my god, get the fire department here now. It was the full moon shining through trees. I let my parakeet out to get some air and now he's stuck in a tree. Award-winning event at the annual firefighter dinner for most entertaining call for service. Included gems such as Unit 1400 on scene, no feathers showing from the outside, checking the area. And dispatch be advised, subject is a flight risk. 20-year 911 dispatcher and supervisor here. Had a guy call and ask if the line was recorded. I assured him all our lines were recorded. He started to recite his last will and testament and then shot himself. All 911 recordings are legal documents, so he just saved money on a lawyer giving his will over the phone. 6:30 Christmas morning. 911 goes off. 911. What's your emergency? Breathless, panicky voice. How do I get the cranberry sauce out of the can without it coming out in chunks? Open the other end and slide it out on a plate. Ooh! Thank you. You are brilliant. I wasn't considered so brilliant once I had to dispatch an officer over there to educate her on proper 911 usage. Merry Christmas, here's your citation. Many, many years ago, 1962 or so, I managed to rotary dial the Ohio State Highway Patrol and tell them to come arrest my mom because she wouldn't let me go outside and play in the rain. I was 4. Not an operator, but my now ex-boyfriend who called in. He usually worked a late shift, walking home about 2 a.m. This shift he got off work a few hours late. BF, I'd like to call and report a fire. 911, where is it located, sir? BF, on the hillside just east of 911. Can you be more specific? BF, yes, gives a more detailed location. Oh god, it's getting bigger. The whole top of the hill is on fire now. 911, stay calm, sir, we're sending somebody out. BF, it's getting bigger. Doesn't anybody else see this? It's lighting up the sky around it. It's huge. Oh god. Oh, wait, 911, sir? BF, I am so sorry. I'm not usually out this time of night. I just got off work late. That's the sun. 911. BF, I am so sorry for wasting your time. There is no fire. That's just the sun rising. Never mind. I'm really embarrassed. 911, that's fine, sir. I will cancel the call. Thank you for calling. Back when I was in high school, a group of boys were making prank calls to emergency services. The lunch lady who had tolerated a bunch of stuff from them had enough and called the non-emergency line to report them. Police arrived, fined them, and the boys got detention for a month. I later learned that their parents were not amused and grounded them for the same month, and took all electronics so they couldn't communicate with each other outside of school. And the boys had to pay the fines with their own money. Their parents wouldn't pay a single dime. At school, every other student was disgusted by their behavior and ignored them completely. The rest of the year, the boys were incredibly well behaved. Not a dispatcher, but I worked security at a college and fielded the calls as I did my rounds. The best story I have is a guy who called about a bobcat in front of the library. He called up out of breath and said there was a wildcat intimidating people, so they could not enter or exit the building. I was fairly close, so I started to run over. I asked if anyone was injured, and he said no. I was expecting a group of people held up at the entrance by a huge cat hissing at everyone. I told him to keep away from it and stay on the line. When I got there, I found a tabby cat perched on a bench. I verified the caller and the cat he called about. I went over to the cat with him and started pet him. He rolled over and let me scratch his belly. The guy was shocked and said, "Oh, someone has domesticated it." Yup. I smiled and walked away. Guy called for a suspicious PKG on his porch. Cop comes out, picks it up, looks at it, then asks if he ordered anything from Amazon. Guy says yes. Cop hands him the PKG and says, "Have a good day." Guy just says sorry and goes in the house. Not an operator, I'm a prosecutor. Guy lived in a rooming house that had a public area where all the residents could hang out. It had a microwave in it provided by the landlord. Guy called 911 around midnight one night because the microwave wasn't there. The conversation with the dispatcher went something like this. Dispatcher: "So you called 911 because a microwave you don't even own is missing? Did you ask your landlord if he took it?" Guy: no. Dispatcher: "Well, that's not an emergency, sir." Die. "But I'm really hungry." Meanwhile, a person with an actual emergency had to be put on hold briefly because this guy was adamant that this was the worst thing to ever happen. The genius insisted that police officers be sent to his rooming house ASAP because of the missing microwave. Officers showed up so they could cite him for improper use of 911. The guy pleaded not guilty and requested a jury trial. He represented himself. The jury was out 20 minutes before it announced its guilty verdict. When I was younger, my mother was a paramedic supervisor. The dispatch desk was pretty much a lot of respect for those peeps. This was in Gilbert, Arizona. If you know about this place, this story shouldn't surprise you. The call came in from an elderly woman because there was a black guy at the park. I asked her what he was doing. She said, "Nothing. He's just sitting there." So I asked her what the problem was. Her response was, "He shouldn't be there." I almost sent the cops to her place to pick her up as a mentally unstable person. Not a 911 operator, but I work in the ER, and the amount of young men, typically, who come in after their first major hangover always has me laughing. To those who are angry or upset about this, please know we can see the difference between alcohol poisoning and a bad hangover. I don't work for 911, but I used to work at a restaurant, and we had a guy one time who called 911 because we refused to serve him alcohol. 1, he looked like he was 16 years old and didn't have an ID. 2, he was already so drunk he couldn't actually manage to sit on a bar stool and not fall off. And we were fairly sure he drove there. One of our managers was actually on the phone calling the non-emergency police line to see if somebody could come pick him up and dump him in the drunk tank when this guy decides to call 911 that we won't serve him liquor. Someone called 911 because their cat looked sad. I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. Police 911 operator here for 15 years. The stories I have. I've had someone call 911 to ask what the fines for parking tickets are. Then I've had someone call 911 to wish me a Merry Xmas when I was working at 3 a.m. on Christmas morning. I've had someone call 911 report that their trunk wasn't opening and they wanted to know what to do about it. I've had someone call 911 in a rural community because a black dude was walking down the street, and we don't get their kind here. And I worked on 9/11. I had people call 911 for weeks after because there were 3 brown guys in a car, and I thought you should know about it. I've had someone call 911 because they were lonely. About 1,000 times. And many, many more. Me, 911, this line is recorded. What is your emergency? Caller: "Hi, I don't know if this counts, but 4 days ago I noticed a U-Haul truck in my neighbor's driveway." Me: "Okay." Caller: "Well, the 2 guys looked really suspicious. They were walking around the house like they didn't belong there." Me: "4 days ago?" Caller: "It's been bothering me because my neighbors have been on vacation and no one should be there." Me: "Okay, we'll take a look." The entire house had been ransacked. All the valuables were gone. Too much time had passed for the local pawn shops to have the items because they know what is stolen and needs to be moved quickly. LPT, if something doesn't seem right, don't ever second guess calling the cops immediately. If the operator gives you attitude, make a complaint.